Hieronymus Bosch was a Dutch painter living in the Duchy of Brabant, which lay close to the modern day Belgian border. He painted at the time of the High Renaissance. And he was therefore a contemporary of Da Vinci, Raphael, Michelangelo, and Titian. Peter Bruegel the Elder came a bit later. To give some sort of context to his lifespan, which stretched roughly from 1450 to 1516, he would have been in his mid-30s at the time of the Battle of Bosworth, as the Wars of the Roses concluded. And when he died, Henry VIII was only in his 20s, with only one wife to his name. The year following his death saw Luther nailing his 95 Theses to the door of a Wittenberg church. And like Luther, Bosch castigated the corruption of the church in his work, where we see both sin and the folly of mankind and the horrors of hell, as well as images of Christ's passion and tormented saints, steadfast against the temptations of the flesh. Now, little is known of Bosch's life, and today only about 25 paintings are confidently attributed to him, along with 8 drawings and another half dozen or so from his workshop. It's generally assumed he was trained as a painter by his father. He grew up in the town of Hertogenbosch, the latter syllable furnishing his family name. We do know he was a popular painter in his lifetime, and he did receive commissions from abroad. Sometime between 1479 and 1481, he married Alette Goyerts. The couple moved to the nearby town of Oerschot, where Alette had inherited a house and land from her wealthy family. Bosch must have been an Orthodox Christian because we know he was a member of the Brotherhood of Our Lady, a large and wealthy organization for whom he executed several commissions, and Philip II of Spain also was a collector of his work. It's hardly surprising, therefore, that some of his earliest paintings, thought to belong to the years 1475 to 80, are small biblical scenes, such as this one called the Epiphany. At this early stage in his career, Bosch's ability to convey perspective, as you can see, was somewhat shaky. Notice the relationship of the stable to the foreground figures. Although the crumbling walls and the thatched roof have been faithfully represented. And Joseph's head, and that's Joseph there, Joseph's head appears at an odd angle to the rest of his body. And the kneeling figure, that kneeling figure here, one of the Magi, seems to be a tad too small compared to the rest of the group. So there we've got a fairly untraditional view of the nativity scene with Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus, and then the 3 Magi. And already Bosch has got his tongue in cheek. These 2 Magi on the right seem to be involved in some sort of conversation, whereas the kneeling figure is presenting either frankincense or myrrh or whatever to the Christ child. You'll see in the background, Bosch makes no attempt to represent Middle Eastern architecture. It's all the background is always populated with Dutch cities and towns. Ecce homo, you see Christ's flesh is severely lacerated so that he makes for a vulnerable figure. His cloak, however, is in a rich satin blue, suggesting someone of very special birth. The mob's anger is clearly portrayed in the faces of what is a 15th century mob, basically. Although curiously, one of these tormentors is wearing a headwear that suggests Islam or Turkish influence. And also, although you can't see it because it's too far away, but we're told that this banner in the distance there, and you can see again, as I just mentioned now, that's definitely a Dutch townscape. That is apparently contains the Turkish crescent. There's also an owl in a niche, and there's the owl. You can look hard for him to see, and then also a giant toad on the shield. The shield is severely cropped, so we can barely see this toad. And we're going to see this owl and toad motif from time to time. They're traditional symbols of evil in Bosch's day. Also, curiously, he's preempted a 20th century phenomenon in so much as he's produced what you might call speech balloons out of the mouths of various figures. Now you can see down here the donors, that is the people who have commissioned this painting, have been painted out at the bottom here, and their followers as well. But there is a speech balloon, for want of a better word, visible there, and it translates as, well, no, it actually says Salve nos Christe Redemptor, so save us Christ our Redeemer, would be a reasonable translation of that, I dare say. And again, Jerusalem in the background there in the top right-hand corner, as I said before, is a typical Dutch landscape, a townscape, I should say. Christ carrying the cross. Now, this is painted in more muted tones. The anger of the mob is again expressed in their ugly faces. Bosch has made no attempt to recreate a Middle Eastern ethos. This is most definitely a Dutch crowd. And again, we can see the toad on the shield. There it is. Just it's eclipsed by this tree, but it is there. I'm not sure the owl is in this picture. A spike-studded block of wood dangles around Christ's feet, again indicative of North European 15th century ethos. And there we are. If you look hard, you can just see them there on Christ's right foot and then beneath his left foot. One of the fellow malefactors is being tormented by soldiers, and this is in the bottom left there, as you can see. And another kneels before a priest on the other side. The priest appears to be quite bored with his confession, looking by his the expression on his face, and another instance of Bosch having a go at the hypocrisy of the church, a la Luther. Now, painted on the reverse side of this painting, I've just noted, is this roundel. It's an 11-inch roundel, and this is Christ child with a walking frame on wheels. So that's a curious little painting. I'll just let you look at that for a moment. It just gives a bit of a social context of the Dutch 15th century, early 16th century. These are sort of toys that children would have played with. I suspect that's a sort of windmill affair, and that would whiz round in the wind. And this is just a toy that he can just push along. So that's very strange. Another painting which belongs to this early period is The Conjurer. This is a genre painting. The original actually is lost. This happens to be a faithful copy. The man leaning forward is fixed on the pearl. This is the man leaning forward, obviously fixed on the pearl in the conjurer's hand, unaware of being relieved of his purse. So this man on the extreme left is a pickpocket, and he's not portrayed as the usual sort of low-life pickpocket you might see in a crowd. He seems to be wearing spectacles. Doesn't mean to say pickpockets don't wear spectacles, but he just doesn't look like a pickpocket somehow. The shyness of the conjurer, the slyness, I beg your pardon, the slyness of the conjurer and possibly his pickpocket accomplice are suggested by their sharp noses, it's been suggested. So if you've got a sharp nose, that might suggest you can be rather devious. A frog appears to have jumped out of the victim's mouth, and there it is on the table. And an owl sits, the owl makes another appearance. Owl sits in the conjurer's basket, suggesting his cleverness and deviousness. So you can just see his head popping out of the basket there. Notice the dog also with this headgear. He's got some sort of harness on him, a headgear. We're going to see that again later on, as another dog similarly attired. So that's quite a colourful picture, and however much you might dislike or be put off by Bosch's images, especially of his monsters and that sort of thing. His paintings you're going to find are very colourful. Back to the biblical scenes. And we have here the marriage feast at Cana, when water was turned into wine. The miracle is actually being performed bottom right. There we are. This man is this servant here, or the landlord. I don't know what he is, but anyway, he's pouring water into this flagon, and the more empty flagons behind him, or he's already filled it with wine, maybe. This is again, no real attempt to portray the Middle East, but this is a typical North Netherland tavern, with the guests clothed in contemporary dress, as you can see. Christ is seen on the right, flanked by two local worthies. There's the Christ figure making a blessing with his hand, typical gesture in biblical scenes. And these two worthies are either side of him. Next to the nun and possibly the Virgin Mary are the bridal couple. There they are. There's the nun. She might represent the Virgin Mary, it's been suggested. It doesn't look much like a Virgin Mary to me, but still. The figure in the background with a baton is thought to be the landlord, and he seems to be directing the revelry. So he's really in the background. You've got to look hard for him, but there he is. And that's what commentaries have said about him. The painting mixes elements of Dutch genre painting with a scene from the New Testament. There seems to be a lot of whispering in ears around the table, suggesting intrigue and plotting, possibly. Most notably, these two characters here. They're deep in discussion about something. And there's some whispering going on the extreme left here as well. You notice the banquet is about to be served. There's a swan on that platter. I'm not quite sure what's on that platter. And up in the top here is a musician playing bagpipes. So there's a lot going on in this painting. You've got to look Every time you look at it, you see something new. The two dogs have been painted in later, we're told. Those are the two dogs there. I suppose Bosch might have thought that this was a bit of canvas that needed something in it. The couple at the end of the table on the right are richly attired as opposed to most of the others, which is quite curious. This one particularly got a pigtail, suggesting somebody from maybe the very Far East. So what are Bosch's intentions with the portrayal of this miracle? Is he perhaps playing down the significance of it, seeing as he subordinated it to the rest of the picture by squashing it into this bottom right-hand corner? So the miracle is quietly being performed without anybody appreciating it. And notice as well the strange shaped, it's sort of L-shaped table. Well, it's not quite an L, is it? It's an L on an angle. However, in this new moralizing vein, the painting led directly to his tabletop of the 7 deadly sins and the 4 last things. So that's a curious title, isn't it? Tabletop of the 7 deadly sins and the 4 last things. Now, the 4 last things are these roundels in each corner. We'll come to those in a minute. Let's just have a look at the central image, first of all. The central image represents the eye of God, in whose pupil Christ appears from a sarcophagus. So there's the Christ figure appearing out of his tomb. Around the pupil of the eye, of course, are the words, "Beware, beware, God sees." That's a translation. No. And what God sees is displayed in the small cameos in the outer ring of the eye. So these got these segments in the outer ring there. Now I think we'll go straight. I've selected 4 of the segments for you to have a closer look at them. So we'll have a look at them now, I think. So these are randomly selected, these segments. You can see what that scene, little cameo scene, represents envy. This scene represents greed. This scene clearly represents gluttony with a lot of consumption going on. And this scene represents anger or wrath. So these somewhat awkward figures are quite dissimilar to those we meet in Bosch's other work. And the colours, the bright colours, seem to be flat. In the 4 circles, I think I'll let you just look at that a minute, and then we'll go back to the original canvas.
The detail, incredible.
Right, now then, the 4 circles positioned in the corners are painted are death. There's a man on his deathbed. The Last Judgment, well, there we have Christ making his judgment of the souls that have come up to him. And there are the souls at the bottom there. And then heaven and hell. And that is hell on that side. But around this time, or maybe earlier, Bosch painted the stone operation. There we are. This is a curious painting. A surgeon wearing a funnel for a hat is seen removing a stone from a patient's head, thought to be the cause of his madness. A friar, uncertain how the operation will go, stands by ready to read the last rites. while quaffing ale, apparently. Again, Bosch having a go at the church there. And a woman balances a book on her head and may represent human folly. The inscription reads, "Master, cut out the stone fast. My name is Lubert Das." So this is the top and bottom scripture, not scripture, inscription, I should say. Lubert Das is known to be a comical character in Dutch literature, we're told. So that's a very curious painting. Curious subject matter. Bosch again attacked religious orders in The Ship of Fools, painted around the same time as part of a triptych of 3 panels. Bosch was fond of painting triptychs, as we shall see. The flapping banner, curiously, again carries a Turkish crescent. And that's the banner there. We can't see it, but it's just about there. You can just about see it there. An evil-looking owl peeps out from the foliage. There's the owl.
Where?
The monk and nun seem to be having a gay old time here. The nun is playing a musical instrument, as you can see. And the way Bosch has painted them, they seem to be trying to take a bite out of this, whatever it is. It could be dough or bread or something. It's too large to be fruit, I would have thought. And then we've got gluttony is hinted at by the peasant cutting down a roast goose from the mast. And there he is climbing up with his knife, and there's the roast goose. Quite what a roast goose is doing shackled to that mast, I have no idea. Well, we've got a man vomiting over the side of the boat, and there you are. That man is vomiting, we're told. The painting depicts inappropriate revelry. Notice the giant ladle being used as an oar. There we are. Into the drink it goes. A court jester is sitting in the rigging, guzzling from a bowl. That's the court jester there. Some sort of bread, it's suggested, is being dangled from the rigging by. So it's suggested this is some sort of bread here. It's quite what's going on with that. Only Bosch would know, I would imagine. There are 2 nude swimmers gasping, trying to get leftovers there, as you can see at the bottom there, hoping for crumbs from the table, as it were. Bosch is by now well into his satirical, tongue-in-cheek representation of human folly, and this chap is getting 7 bells knocked out of him by this man or woman on the stern of the boat. There's all sorts of things, weird things going on in this painting. It's unlike many of Bosch's, it's quite subdued. The colours are quite muted, actually, and the action seems to be squashed into the bottom half, as you can see. And then we've got this elongated tree, I suppose it must be, or is it the mast from the boat? You keep forgetting that, and they're actually in a boat. The boat isn't particularly obvious, is it? Gluttony and lust are again the targets of this next painting, called simply Gluttony, Allegory of Gluttony and Lust. It's painted about the same time and another part of the same triptych. Gluttony is personified by these swimmers around a large wine barrel ridden by a pot-bellied oaf. So there we are. There's the wine barrel, and this character here with something curious on his head is hanging his bowl out there to catch the wine. from the barrel. Let you have a look at that for a moment.
Mm.
Another swimmer balances a meat pie on his or her head. So that isn't, you might be forgiven thinking this is one of Bosch's grotesque figures, but you can just see the chin there underneath. So the meat pie is being
Oh,
balanced
yes.
or whatever. On the bottom of the painting, Bosch suggests a pair of lovers, their clothes littering the foreground, as you can see. Or they could be the swimmers' clothes, possibly, or they might relate to the couple canoodling in the tent on the right here.
There's a pair of shoes.
The third fragment of the triptych, and this is quite elongated, as you can see, so you can't, it's difficult to see what's going on with this, but it's entitled Death of the Miser. And the painting features the miser on his deathbed. So there's the miser there on his deathbed. Death emerges from a closet on the left. There's Death creeping round this door on the left with an arrow pointing at the miser. So Death is coming for the miser. An angel lays a hand on the miser's shoulder while pointing to Death and seems to be vying with Death for his soul. So there we are. There's a sinister creature holding a lantern peering down from the canopy over the bed. There's this devil or demon.
See that?
What appears to be a demon is offering the dying man a sack of coins here, emphasizing his miserly qualities, I suppose. In the foreground, an old man in green drops money into a coffer littered with demons. The symbolism is obvious there, isn't it? The man's effects including his armor, are strewn around the floor. There we are. Death and human folly are a dominant preoccupation of the Middle Ages, and it's the depiction of the afterlife of souls and the torments of hell which has earned Bosch his unique niche in the history of Western art. He seems to be indicating that if the love of God does not prevent you from sinning, then the fear of hell jolly well should do. His terrors in the final reckoning were intensified by the general sense that the last judgment was close at hand, and that's what many believed at that stage of the Middle Ages. And that brings us nicely to the next triptych, which is the Last Judgment. And now the colours have suddenly pepped up, haven't they? Ooh. So this is a triptych on wood panels. The left panel shows the Garden of Eden. At the top, God is seated in heaven. There's God in heaven with the rebel angels having been cast out. So they're swirling around there like bees around honey. At the foot of the panel, God recreates, not recreates, but creates Eve from the rib of Adam. That's what's going on right at the bottom there. And in the middle ground of the painting, of the left panel, Eve is tempted by the serpent. So that's going on under this tree, the tree of forbidden fruit there, of course. Towards the center of the panel, Adam and Eve are chased by an angel out of the Garden of Eden into the dark forest. So that's the left panel. Now we come to the central panel itself. Jesus judges the souls while surrounded by saints at the top, as you can see. The divine court appears small and very few souls appear to be being saved. Much of the central panel allows Bosch to be as imaginative as he wants with the depiction of the death throes of the human race, possibly drawing on the book of Revelations in the New Testament. Earth has become indistinguishable to a hellscape in the third panel. There we are. We come out to the third panel on the right, where the wicked are being punished. Bosch shared a taste for monsters and the grotesque with the times he lived in. Now we're going. Obviously, there's so much going on in this triptych that you can't take it all in. But I've homed in on one or two details, and I'll just let you look at that.
Good.
Some extraordinary things going on there. Look at this character in the bottom there with his all feet and face and nothing else. Really. And this beetle-like creature is severing this man's arm. It doesn't show any blood, Bosch. So in that sense, it's I think he avoids it being too lurid. It's just absurd, really, isn't it? The characters are just absurd, but very colourful, very colourful and cartoon-like, really. Now there's another detail. This on the extreme right, this curious-looking creature here with a bearded man's face, and goodness knows what Bosch has given him for his ears, and a bulbous sort of hat on his head, and he seems to have a snake's tail or a tail. He's a composite of various things. And I particularly like this demon here, who looks pretty well fed up with the whole thing, really. Curious animal or creature in blue here. I don't know whether this is supposed to be Adam and Eve, these two characters, but they're being got at by the demons, whether they are or not. And notice these two characters in the top, center top there, obviously up to no good. And here's another detail from it as well. We've got a center pavilion there, pavilion tent. Somebody, this is this is why I like Bosch, his sense of humor. I know it's lavatorial, and on occasions, but this guy is using his buttocks to play a musical instrument. Have you seen? Which is probably possible to do. I don't know. Never tried it myself. Anyway, the damned are under this pavilion here, and they're being got at, of course, by all these weird creatures. Look at this on the extreme right, this demon here in lurid green, but not lurid so much as vivid green, I should say. It seems to be spitting fire out of his mouth. If nothing else, Bosch is extraordinarily imaginative. Every square inch of his canvases are littered with grotesque demons. I'm sure none of us would want to end up in a place like this. And this is called, this is in the Doge's Palace in Venice, actually. You'll see these are 4 panels.
Hell.
And Paradise and Hell. So you can see, you must be used to it by now. You can see that we've got the Garden of Eden and various scenes being enacted in the Garden of Eden there. And then the souls are going up to heaven in this, being drawn towards this tunnel of light, which those who advocate near-death experiences talk about all the time, don't they? Going towards a tunnel of light. So that could be where they've got the idea from. I don't know. And then the third panel, the damned souls are being cast into hell and being plagued by the demons. And then on the extreme left, we've got another vision of hell. For Bosch, sin plus folly is the universal human condition, and the fires of hell, man's destiny. And we see this in this, what's called the haywain, another triptych, which actually exists in two versions, and both of them are in Spain. One in San Lorenzo de El Escorial, and the other is in the Prado. Bosch paints a giant haywain lumbering across a vast landscape, followed by a procession of the great and good. There's the great and good. While total mayhem breaks out around the wheels. There we are. This is mayhem. We'll see this in more detail in a minute. The wagon is being pulled by devils and demons, presumably to hell. There are the devils and demons. From a cloud, Christ appears to be gesturing in despair at what he sees below. Mm-hmm. So we've got a very clear divine shrug there. Oh my God, what's going down there? And Bosch mainly focuses on the 7 deadly sins again. Greed leads to discord, violence, and even murder. In the 16th century, hay apparently had connotations of deceit and lying. Not quite sure how they made that association, but that's what we're told anyway. The left panel reflects images of paradise, while the right panel, where the tower is being constructed by devils, depicts hellish scenes again. It may be a parody of the Tower of Babel, of course. So we can have a little bit of a closer look now at the central panel here.
It's a detail I can't get over.
So many things going on. Every square inch of the canvas is, apart from the actual haywain itself, is being littered with figures and characters either up to no good or being damned or being attacked by demons and devils. But it's very colourful. There's a lot of colour there. And there's another detail from the right-hand panel. I think we should all go to church more often if this is what's lined up for us. Says I who never goes to church at all.
Jeepers.
In the haywain triptych, Bosch is generally commenting on the nasty side of human nature, but in this next triptych, Garden of Earthly Delights, he focuses on anything but, especially in the central panel. A park-like landscape teems with nude people consorting with birds and animals and shamelessly cavorting in amorous activities. In the middle distance, a circle of male riders, there they are, revolve around a pool filled with maidens. And there's the pool filled with maidens. Bright colours and the absence of shadows heighten the feeling of carefree joy. What Bosch has painted is nothing short of a 1960s universal love-in, as we might have seen at Woodstock, cast your memories back. Inevitably, he also has in mind the deadly sin of lust, where it's frank, hence its frank portrayal. It's been suggested that what Bosch is actually showing us is a false paradise, where carefree sexual activity leads to ruin and damnation. The left panel shows Adam waking from a deep sleep to find God holding Eve by the wrist and giving the sign of the blessing to the union. So there we are, we can see that happening there. It's said that though many of the creatures in the foreground are fantastical, others in the mid and background are drawn from contemporary travel literature. The hellscape of the right panel is painted in stark contrast. colours are vivid and cold. Now there's a detail from the right panel. The central focus is on what is called the tree man, whose broken eggshell body is supported on rotting tree trunks.
It's got legs.
So there's these legs are tree trunks, as you can see. On his head, he balances a disc-shaped hat with demons and their victims parading around a huge set of bagpipes. And there we are. This poor soul is being paraded by this strange-looking bird-like creature. A hooded figure with an arrow jammed up his buttocks climbs a ladder into the tree man's central cavity. There he is. And he's got his, there's his arrow. It must be painful, I should have thought.
Yeah. It looks like a
Thought by some that the tree man's face may be a self-portrait. I don't know what evidence we've got for that. And towards the bottom, sitting on a throne, a monster with a bird's head gorges on damned souls. Which is this, well, oh yes, I'm sorry, you can't see that from, I don't think. There we are, that's the detail, you can see it better now, right. So this monster is sitting on this throne with a bird's head gorging on a damned soul there, eating a damned soul, while he disgustingly excretes through a cavity below him into a transparent chamber pot, for want of a better word. And then in this one, we got this very strange looking.
They look like ears.
It's a huge pair of ears, which is advancing like some sort of hellish military piece of armament. Most of his contemporaries would have believed that devils actively involve themselves in human affairs with evil intent. In this triptych, Bosch is at the height of his powers as a moralizing painter. His work at this time reflects the Renaissance taste for the original, intricate allegory painted for the non-clerical nobility. So one does wonder who would want these paintings hanging on their walls or whatever. But obviously, he was commissioned to paint them, so I can only assume that they got some sort of amusement out of them. This painting is called the Wayfarer. The building is, he seems to be leaving in a terribly dilapidated state. It suggests it's an house of ill repute. Well, the peddler heads for the gate and to a bucolic, innocent existence beyond.
He's got a hat.
So he's been spending his time in the brothel, and now he's seen the error of his ways and he's heading for the countryside. That's what we're told to believe, anyway. A man relieves himself against the wall. Look at this man. He's Bosch. He's tongue in cheek again. He can't resist it, can he? He can't resist making us smile. Yet another owl, often a symbol of evil, as we said, sits in the tree. And there's the owl in the tree.
Oh, yes.
And of course, he's painted this as a roundel, as you can see. At this point, it's worth reminding ourselves that well over half of Bosch's paintings were actually devoted to traditional Christian iconography, such as this painting, Christ on the Cross, with donor and saints. Now, when I say donor, that means the person who's commissioned the painting, and they often wanted themselves to be represented in the painting. And in this instance, the donor is on his knees, as they often are. So there is the donor, but we don't know his name. Again, Jerusalem in the background is transformed into a simple Dutch town. There we are, right in the background there. However, in many of his paintings, Bosch can't resist transcending traditional biblical images with suggestions of the eternal conflict between good and evil. So there we've got the Virgin Mary, and I take that figure to be St. John. And obviously this figure on the right is St. Peter, because what has he got in his hand but keys?
Mm.
The Epiphany triptych was commissioned as an altarpiece by two rich Antwerp burghers, painted into the side panels accompanying the holy figures. And one of those is a woman. They could be a married pair, of course. So there's one on the right and there's the other on the left, and they're both the woman is accompanied by possibly the Virgin. Well, it can't be the Virgin Mary, and it's a female saint anyway. And on the right, on the left, there we have the other holy figure. The Magi are painted in a traditional way, but what is curious are the shepherds peering around the stable. There they are, with their slightly loony faces.
And there's someone on the roof.
There's something sinister about their expressions on their faces and of the faces of the followers. One explanation is that they may be Herod's spies. In the background, Bosch has inexplicably painted in armies. There we are, armies attacking each other. But again, these could possibly be Herod's armies. Look at this character in the doorway there. He looks very sinister. He's on at the nativity, and it's been suggested he might be. Oh, there's two of them there actually, maybe three. At this distance, it's hard to say. If we were standing in front of this triptych, we'd see far more clearly, of course. But it's, as I said, it's suggested that these might be Herod's spies, and there's figures on the roof there as well, of course. So curiouser and curiouser. This is Christ carrying the cross. Note the faces in the crowd. His characters becoming increasingly North European and exaggerated in their ugliness. Even Simon of Cyrene looks gaunt and surely frail to help carry the cross. Christ is also depicted with this curious dangling footwear again, which is supposed to be, I suppose, a device of torture. And I love this guy's, or this, it could be a woman, but I love this character's face. Looks very wistful. Most of the action is squashed into the top left-hand corner, as we can see. And this rabbi or whatever he is, seems to be suggesting to Simon of Cyrene that he may not be a good idea to help Christ with the cross. Notice the cross as well. It's a strange shape, this cross. Very strange shape. It's not a T shape at all.
It isn't a cross.
And here we've got Christ crowned with thorns. A resigned Jesus gazes calmly out of the picture in complete contrast with the mendacious, mocking faces of the men around him. So these are North European faces again, possibly locals that modeled for him, or he's just created them from his imagination. Forensic examination reveals that in the preliminary sketch, the soldier's cruelty was far more brutal. All right, I haven't gone to sleep. I'm just pausing so you can take in the painting before we move on to the next one. This one is Saint Jerome at prayer. We can see the saint abjectly prostrate in prayer, his red cardinal coat cast aside over this trunk, this fallen tree trunk. Typically, Bosch has added some bizarre details, such as the spherical shell in the pool. There we are in the bottom left-hand corner. There's no accounting for that. The background landscape is extensively painted in largely green tones, as you can see. Saint Jerome is highlighted so that we can't. The gloominess of the rest of the picture, of course, makes sure that he's well picked out.